Hey everybody, Quantum here, and in this video I wanted to review some of the tournaments that happened on the weekend before Christmas. Hopefully you're having some good holidays and a Merry Christmas. But because we are in Boxing Week now, basically, maybe it's worth taking a look at what's been performing well in the meta, or how the meta has evolved, before you decide to buy some of your singles that hopefully are on sale. So I want to take a look at this German tournament with 56 players. We see Amber Steel Song taking the win here, and it's very interesting to see that Ruby Amethyst and Amber Steel Song are still doing what those decks have done since set 1, and I'm actually happy. It's a good legacy for the game to have, these very powerful ink pairings that show that they are resilient through future set releases. I'm sure they'll fall off eventually completely, but or at least in what they aim to do since set 1. But it's good. The OGs, 10-15 years from now, we'll talk about how this meta was Ruby Amethyst, Amber Steel Song, the two decks always duking it out. Anyways, pretty standard list here. They're going the Simba route. No 2-drop Simba. It's a pretty niche interaction to try to bring in the 2-drop Simba and then shift this Simba for 3, so you use 5 ink anyways, just to get an exerted Simba Pride Protector on board. It's not really worth it, so I can understand why you don't want to play the 2-drop Simba when you can play things like Ursula and Mr. Smee instead. The one of Lawrence, again, just kind of random, but sure. You've got 8 1-drops in total. Just don't play 4 Pete's, play 1 Lawrence instead. Makes sense, I guess, because there are certain matchups where Pete is dead, but I think it's pretty acknowledged at this point you want to play 3 to 4 Pete's in pretty much every list. He's just like he like when you need to see him, if you do see him, he can win you the game, right? Like it's just that good. So yeah, I think people are jumping on the no more 1-ofs, 2-ofs of Pete's. It's either like 3, 4, and that's what we're aiming for. Pluto, Naveen's, and Rapunzel's, of course, and on the Robin Hood Shift package as well. This is definitely making its way back into a lot of Amber Steel decks, simply because it deals with a lot of the tempo and aggro in the format, and there's a lot of it right now. Unfortunately, this list does look very weak to red-blue, but Amber Steel Song really can beat any deck on its day when it gets its good line of play, which isn't usually too hard to facilitate through, since again you have aerials and stuff like that you can dig for your songs if you mulligan them away and look for the aerial, for example. And then of course you have the steel removal, which, removing all your opponent's threats while you still have them on board and then singing Whole New World, that's a game-winning play. It's been that way since set 1, and it continues to do so. So congratulations to that opponent for winning, or that player for winning the tournament with Amber Steel. Second place, we've got Emerald Steel, and this list looks kind of, at a first glance, it looks kind of all over the place, but when you look at it, I guess it is still a little scrambled, but what I do appreciate or can appreciate is, like traditionally I would say like, 2-ofs is, is inconsistent, it doesn't make sense. But depending on which line of play you see, like if you see Friar Tuck and you don't see the Muses, you can alter how you develop your board and what you want to play for in future turns. Or if you see both, you can say I'm going to ink this one because I know like the other one is better in a certain matchup. So like, while I do often say how important consistency is, in certain scenarios you can break those rules if your deck can remain agile enough to be that versatile, right? Like can I win my matchups if I don't see my Muses? Like how integral is this card in the deck? If it's really integral, then I need to play 4, right? Versus I can play my deck strategy without the Muses. It adds X amount of advantage or X amount of build-up play or extensions to my plays, which, in this case, I wouldn't say necessarily so. Like the Friar Tuck or the Muses, do I need to just go aggressive discard, or do I need to go for more board control, right? And I think you can still do board control with like the Ursula and the Songs, for example. You can still do the discard with the Lucifer, with the Sudden Chills. So like it's a decently balanced list despite it looking a little inconsistent, so I can appreciate that. But interesting that they lost to Steel Song, which you'd think that Emerald Steel could have a really good matchup into it since they play the Ursula Deceivers, but if you didn't catch it, that player was on 3. Next up, you got Ruby Amethyst, and this list looks pretty much exactly the same list that I've talked about many times in the past. The only difference is instead of 4 Genies and 4 Flynns, they've gone for 2 White Rose, which I can appreciate because it just gives you that extra little bit of solidity factor, if that makes sense. Probably not, but what I mean by that is, I do like playing the 8 2-drop, so I do think playing 7 is a little weak. I would rather play 8. However, what this does is it allows you to have a very viable play on 3, because sometimes you don't want a Fox, and playing the Fox is your only play, and you're like, if I don't develop a 3-cost card, I'm kind of just behind, so I'll just play the Fox. Like Fox and Snake are such good cards to bounce back useful resources, whether that be for ink or to trigger effects like Goat or Genie, or on the replay, or Merlin, recycle cards like Belle, Elsa, etc. Sometimes just having to play them out without gaining the advantage off of their ability, like with Fox to rush and take out a character and go 2 for 1 potentially, does hurt. And having the additional 3-drop in the White Rose, that's still a solid body. It kind of feels like Maleficent from first chapter, where you just play or draw a card and you're like, great. Like, it feels really good to develop this character. It costs 3, it drew me a card, it thinned my deck, right? Maintain card advantage, and it's a singer for friends. Yes, it's 2/2, so it gets wiped out by almost everything, but that's totally fine. Like Maleficent, whenever you saw Maleficent on 3, you just felt really strong when you were playing Ruby Amethyst, if you were playing it in the past, especially during chapter 1 and 2. But aside from that, yeah, the list is bang on, like just the standard list that we've talked about before. Next up, we've got an Amber Steel Mufasa. What I will say about a deck like this, like they do play a lot of Lord of the Ground cards. Like hitting Calhoun and Daisy Duck or even Doc off of the Mufasa isn't the worst. Hitting Piglet and this Doc is pretty bad in my opinion. Hitting like Pete's is bad, and I guess like Cinderella is bad as well. And then you have 10 songs. So it does seem like Mufasa has a decent amount of targets to, like, I don't want to say whiff on completely, because obviously you whiff on the actions, but just like you kind of whiff if you hit Cinderella and stuff, right? Like it doesn't feel great. And your top end threats just aren't as impactful as Ruby, Amber, Mufasa. But again, you do have the versatility of playing Lord of the Ground if you don't see the Mufasa, right? Because this deck isn't, even though it's called Mufasa, it's not like, well, I'm not just building a deck to only trigger Mufasa. I have to think about what I'm playing before that too, right? And how I'm dealing with the board and doing my own thing. And Mufasa, it costs 5. It's a 3/3. You're thinking like, what other 5-cost cards do I develop? Chenpo in this case, or Gontu, or the Mufasa. And the Mufasa is still sticky, right? So even if it gets removed, it can be enough to just help you get over the line on the card that it brings out. So yeah, interesting list. I can respect it. The 4 Pete's I like a lot. So when you go wide, you're able to protect against a Be Prepared, because actually a good chunk of your stuff still gets wiped out by Big Sisu, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if this is damage, 6, but 5 we'll say for now. And then if this is damage again, 7, and then Rapunzel also, so 8. 8 to 10 targets that are all Big Sisuable. So that's a bit of a concern. But Amber Steel, very good at being aggro, and it can definitely do its thing. So those were the top 4 from that tournament. The big tournament that happened, though, was actually not too far from me. It's about 2 hours away, but unfortunately it's, again, too busy to go. We don't have the results from this Enter the Battlefield 10K, but we do have a top 4 list from Ruby Sapphire, which, in my opinion, is probably the strongest deck in the format, despite it not winning anything major yet. No European Championship, no LCCC from like Pixelborn, etc. But we'll see. The North American one is still yet to come. Interesting in this list that they're only on 2 Big Sisu and 2 Be Prepareds, opting to play this Energy Blast, which is wild. But they must be on Maui Sharks. They are on 2. Recurring this with Maui Shark is pretty strong, right? Banish a character and draw a card and gain 1 lore is basically what this card does. The Pirate's Life continues to be a card that the foil copies just keep going up and up and up. I think I saw a shop selling them for 15 Canadian now, which is absolutely insanity in my opinion. But anyways, 3 Ice Block, 4 Popsicle, 2 Vitalosphere. I do think a card like the Magic Potion, or Might, the Potion of Might I think it's called, is really overlooked and underrated right now, simply because it makes Tipo and Sisu like 4/2, 4/1 bodies. That's a really relevant stat line, especially with Sisu and Evasive taking out Genie. The Vitalosphere at 2, buffing up Grammatala, Madame Medusa, giving the Maui Rush, or giving anything Rush, right, can be good. Only 2 dragons as well, and then 1 Great Stone Dragon. So some interesting tech options still on the Fishbone Quill, which has been cut, but players might experiment going back to it as a one-of. You have 2 different constant ramping options beyond the one-time ramp effects of Tipo, Sail, and How Far I'll Go. Yeah, very interesting. Not sure how I feel about 3 Tamatoa, 2 Maleficent Dragon, 2 Big Sisu, and 2 Be Prepareds. I really do want to see how this Energy Blast card works, though, I should say. So it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. We got the Dwarf Mine, so this should be DeCanio's exact list, so we don't need to necessarily review this one. But it shows that other people are able to pilot this as well, and it is a very strong deck if you've ever played against it. I have not played a human player against this list yet, or who was using this list, and I have not played this exact list, like the Canio's focus list. I've played Dwarf Mine with the Tapian Dock before, but in Steel Amethyst, which I probably just wasn't playing it right, but it just didn't feel great. But in Amber Steel, it makes sense, right? Because there's a lot of synergy that you get off of drawing and flooding the board with the Amber cards, like Cinderella Daisy, and now the Lilo and the Piglet. And the draw engine of Rapunzel is much faster than the Amethyst draw engines. That being said, though, right, like it's a shotgun, right? Like you shoot it once and it doesn't really reload. Whereas with the Amethyst cards, you're recycling them and gaining advantage slowly over time. So, this fits the aggro strategy, and then, having some form of board control with Dwarf Mine makes sense as well. So that's really interesting to see. So yeah, that's pretty much it for those two big tournaments. I don't want this video to get too long because I know my meta reviews can get kind of long, but yeah, it does seem like Amber Steel Song, Red Blue, and Ruby Amethyst, which wasn't really featured here, are the three decks at the top of the meta right now. I would say Emerald Amethyst is also up there, but I'd probably cap it at those four decks as being in the top of the meta. And arguably, I would say Emerald Amethyst is now probably one of the weaker of the top decks, simply because Amber Steel Song does very good against it, and Red Blue is learning to play against it as well. So I guess, I clicked on another one here. This was a tournament in France. And as I just said, Emerald Amethyst was looking a little bit weaker now. We are seeing it play here. Okay, I like this. I like the Vision Slab in this deck. I was looking at this card the other day, but I totally forgot about it. And like I was just saying how like Amber Steel checks this deck, this is one of the cards that stops Amber Steel because it will stop the Rapunzel. Damage counters can't be removed. It also stops Belle on the opposing side. Or on your side as well, so you probably don't even play Belle on this list, which they're not. But stopping the Rapunzel with Vision Slab is like really strong against the it's enough to win you the game. Like this single card, because you shut off one of their draw threes. Like yes, they still have Doc, but the Rapunzel is still Rapunzel. So that's really cool to see that this player was using that. I'm glad I clicked on that tournament. Yeah, a very aggro focused list. I do like Tiny Adversary here. Only has a 2 of, and Sir Hiss is very interesting as well. That's a kind of a puzzling choice for me. And then one Lucifer. This list is kind of just, it feels all over the place, but maybe he was taken for his local meta, so that's pretty cool to see. And yeah, it won. It won the tournament, the Vision Slab list, which is kind of cool, beating out not even discard. Holy, why under the 3? Wow, that's a nice little play on the name there, I guess. So no characters costing over 3. This is just Emerald Amber aggro. If you watch my video from last night, I put together a budget version of this deck back when Curse Merfolk was like at $1 again. And I picked up foils for like $5 Canadian. I'm sure they've gone up since then. But yeah, this deck, I'm surprised no one has had success with it, because it did see some success earlier in set 5. It got some decent tools. This Prince Philip is pretty good. A 3-cost inkable 3/2 that basically requires your opponent to have Grab Your Swords to remove it. It's pretty good. It gets around the Big Sisu, which is definitely the meta card that you have to play around nowadays. Got Doc, in order to play multiple interactions or multiple characters in a turn, but you don't have any draw engines, right? Dale, Chip. For Captain Hook, I'm just trying to think, sorry guys, I'm just trying to think like whenever this character is challenged, draw a card. So it's kind of like Mad Hatter from the first chapter, right? Most people will just out this with some other form of removal, or just challenge it one time and it replaces itself, sure. It does quest for 2. Yeah, that's a lot of 3 drops, eh? Wow. Simba's like not even Rapunzel's or anything. I'm just trying to think how a deck like this could just face up against the most of the meta and still come out on top. But yeah, I'm glad we clicked on this because we had to. Wow, top 8 with Steel Ruby on the Li Shang. Okay. 4 or more strength at +1 lore. And we're not even on Lumiere. Okay. Well, yeah, France this is in France, right? Yeah, France is on something else, man. Wow. Pretty cool stuff from the French there. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know what you guys think if you made it this far. Thank you again for watching if you did. Quantum is out.